So, Nessie, we know last week, Tennessee Titans were not going to pass on generational talent. We discussed that there's really only two players here with generational talent, maybe three, if you count the old running back at Boise State. But regardless, there's two generational talents we kind of see. We're using these words as close. Maybe these guys aren't generationally talented. Maybe that's too big of a label to put on these guys. Regardless, we have to use the words the GM used, and he said generational talent. And there's only two players that come close to that definition. And Tennessee ain't drafting either one of them. Because we discussed when your quarterback goes 13-12, touchdown to interception ratio, you got to fix that up as soon as possible.
ASAP.
So with the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Cam Ward, quarterback, out of Miami. You know what I need, Nate? I need the NFL Draft jingle. Dun, dun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes like dun 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 dun. Oh man, if I heard it, I would be able to do it. But that's not a good representation of the jingle. But yes, a quarterback goes number one. Generally, that's what happens. A quarterback or the generational talent at defense goes number one. Mm-hmm. So then we get to number two. As we still eat a little gravy with C. Davey. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock. We discussed, hey, Myles Garrett is gone. You need a guy to fill those shoes. Because you're going to trade Myles Garrett. You're going to honor that request because there's no bad blood between Myles Garrett and Cleveland. You're going to honor the request he has and say, hey, let's get another guy in here like we did way back when we drafted him number one overall. But this year, let's make it number two overall. And let's have ourselves another Myles Garrett tenure in Cleveland. And at number two, Nate, Abdul Carter out of Penn State goes to Cleveland. So then we get to number three. The New York Giants are on the clock. And I have told you once before, if you're going to draft a quarterback, it's probably going to be Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Now, I've discussed, I don't really care for Cam Ward's attitude, and I think Shedeur Sanders might be a little bit too overhyped. But I think we agreed that his footwork is beyond probably what it should be at this point in his career. Because he works out with the GOAT. And prime time put him in the situation to be prime.
MJ gonna get you.
Yeah, MJ gonna get me. MJ is gonna get me. I used to be a Tom Brady non-believer too until I saw him retire Drew Brees in the playoffs, and I almost cried myself like a baby to sleep that night because Drew Brees retired. But New York Giants, Shedeur Sanders is not your guy. I can't see Shedeur Sanders playing under Brian DeBall if Brian DeBall stays in New York. I can't see Shedeur playing under him. So, in the event that Shedeur does get picked number three, somebody's going to have to trade up to get him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to tell you, Pete Carroll in Las Vegas is looking all over Shedeur Sanders. So the Raiders trade up to number three for our first trade in our 2025 first-round mock draft. And the Las Vegas Raiders select Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. So that leaves the New England Patriots at number four. Pretty sure we discussed there's two people that really fit the term generational talent or come close to it in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Patriots, this player could be beneficial on both sides of the ball because you need a lot to fix this team in New England.
Yep.
And why not kill two birds with one stone by picking a player who can kill two birds with one stone? So let's go. Travis Hunter, wide receiver cornerback out of Colorado. Yes, he will be a two-way player. And yes, he is set to be a corner in the combine. But he will most definitely play two ways. There's no way he won't. So then we continue. I'm trying to speed this up so we don't go over time. And I get to go in depth in my last six. So, Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. They are in dire need of secondary. And the best prospect for secondary position is available at number 5. And I'm certain he's the best corner in this class. I'll put him above Travis Hunter. And that's going to be Will Johnson out of Michigan. So you get a good corner because right now your secondary ain't hitting it like it should. And you get Will Johnson out of Michigan. Someone you said, Nate, should be one of the most pro-ready prospects in this draft class.
Yes. Very good ball player. Very, very, very good ball player.
So we continue. Giants moved down to 6. Raiders moved up to 3. Draft Shador. But the Giants still have a guy. You need a quarterback in New York. Whether it be Jabbo. I don't know who you bring in free agency. You bring a guy in free agency. You brought Drew Lock last year. Had a really good game one time. But I think there's a guy that's a little bit more consistent than Drew Lock, and I pointed that out last week. And this might be a reach, but I'm going to stick with it. I told you I tweaked one position, and it ain't this one. But I'm going to say at number 6, the New York Giants draft Jackson Dart, quarterback out of Ole Miss. And if you want... Over who?
Over Cam Ward?
No, Cam Ward went 1.
Oh.
Yeah, Cam Ward's gone. But if I'm going too fast and you want an in-depth explanation of these picks, go ahead, click on that TDT Media. It's right next to that subscribe button. That should be gray. If it ain't gray, I'm going to go make it gray for you. I'm going to come to your house and make it gray. Make sure it's gray. Click on that little bottle cap to the left of that subscribe button. That should be gray. Scroll a little bit when you go in videos, and it should say the top 10 picks of the 2024 NFL Draft. Click on it, and we'll go more in depth what we did last week. But let's continue. Number 7, the New York Jets are on the clock. You have 2 tackles that are going to be gone in free agency. You have to feel that right away. You cannot have big starters leave and not address it as your first pick in the draft. It just can't happen. If you end up not addressing a tackle with your first pick, you might be in trouble, New York, because you have the chance to get the best tackle in this class, and I'm going to say you do. So at number 7, the New York Jets select Will Campbell, tackle out of LSU. So we keep going.
I like that.
Now, Nate, last week, the Carolina Panthers at number 8. I told you that I really like Nick Scorton as this guy because Carolina likes to play a little bit of mix between 4 down linemen and 3 down linemen. So Nick Scorton has that experience. But I thought about it. Which prospect defensively, edge-wise, because you got to replace Brian Burns after you sold him for a bag of chips.
Bag of Doritos.
A bag of Doritos, thank you. And you didn't get a Diet Coke or no beverage to pair with that. It was just a bag of chips. Some of them nasty Doritos, too. You didn't get good Doritos out of that transaction. But you got to get an edge here. And I thought, man, there is a team, an SEC team, that loves to chant Rocky Top. And they happen to play at 3-3-5. So there's a guy in Tennessee that knows a little bit about 3 down lineman ball. Which Tennessee, when their defense is shifted, they run a little bit of a 3-4, a base 3-4, which is exactly what the Panthers run in Carolina. So with the number 8 pick, the Carolina Panthers select James Pierce Jr., edge out of
That
Tennessee.
I like James Pierce.
I thought about it and I said, well, I really like Nick Scorton, but at the same time, there's a guy that fits this piece better. There's a piece of the puzzle that's perfect and not as rigid, and you don't have to slam it down against the table to fit it. You can just put it nice and easy into that little spot you're missing. And James Pierce Jr. is that piece. So let's keep going. The New Orleans Saints are on the clock. We just had a segment about the new coaching staff in New Orleans, the new regime, if you will. And at number 9, you got to address your wide receiver room. Yeah. You got to. You had a 9th string wide receiver playing. Yes, 9th string, coming up off the practice squad and playing in a game where you lost 34-0 against the Green Bay Packers because he caught 2 out of 9 passes. You have to address that. Chris Olave, he might be gone. There's a very good chance Chris Olave doesn't stay in the Crescent City. What did I tell you earlier, Nate, about the New York Jets? You got to address your biggest need. And your biggest need opens up when one of your best players goes out the door. And in this case, it might be Chris Olave. So the only way to have insurance, and not Jeff Retepney's insurance, but very close to it, is to draft the best wide receiver prospect in this draft class. And that's going to be Mr. Tet McMillan out of Arizona. And I love this pick, Nate. He's physical. I want another Marcus Colston in New Orleans. That's what I want. And this guy might be a little better, might be a little more physical. But until the end of his career, we'll see who the best wide receiver in New Orleans is. And this guy's bigger than Marcus Colston.
Mm-hmm. T-Mac, Arizona. Bear down, baby. Bear down.
Bear down. Chicago Bears, because that's who is at number 10. The Chicago Bears, and I really like this pick at number 10. I'm going to stick with it. Now, the Chicago Bears they got to build around Caleb Williams. That is the only option at this point. You have to build around Caleb Williams. For that to happen, you gave him weapons, but you didn't give him protection to get to the weapons. So you got to draft a guy that could play at tackle, could play at guard. I have him as both because I think if you draft him, you can put him any way you want to. Maybe not center, but tackle or guard for sure. And at number 10, the Chicago Bears picked Kelvin Banks Jr., tackle out of Texas. And I love this pick. There's a lot of these picks I love, and this is one of them. But we keep eating, Nate. Now we get to the point in the video where I have kind of rushed through a little bit. Not that I kind of like. Oh, it's our guy right here. We got to bring him on the show, Nate. I emailed him. We're going to talk about that later. But this is our guy right here. This is Louisiana native. He's a big LSU Saints guy. He sees my little Marshawn Lattimore jersey on. I told him I wanted to bring him on for a Saints-themed segment. If you have not seen the segment we just had between the Number Sports, please go back and watch it. I'd love to have your comments on it and see. Yes. And maybe we can have a little discussion about it in the future on the breakdown. But I love your support. Keep grinding, my guy, and keep commenting, and I'd love to chat with you soon. But we are at the point of the video where we have kind of rushed through those first 10 picks because we talked about them last year. If you want a more in-depth discussion, I told you how to get there. Go to videos. Go search for the video that says top 10 picks of the 2025 NFL Draft. We have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We got 6 picks left, Nate. So let's talk about it. The San Francisco 49ers are on the clock, and this is where you lock in with me, Nate, because you heard those picks before, so it's not new. This is new to you. At number 11, Nate, who do you think San Fran should go after? What position do you think? I'm going to give you the question, have you answer it. What do you think?
Well, man, respectfully, They need to shore up some things on that offensive line. I feel need to figure out what they're going to do with Brock Purdy. That's one of the things they need to figure out what they're going to do with Brock Purdy. Receiver wise, you don't know if you're going to get whether you're going to trade Debo, and then Brandon Ayuk is coming off of a torn ACL, so you can address that position. But then again, there's going to be too many people in that one wide receiver room. Um, I personally, I'm all about defense, and
Okay.
I would go and address either the defensive line to add another pass rusher on the opposite side of Nick Bosa, or I would honestly grab a linebacker if there's a decent linebacker that you can pair um, with Fred Warner. I mean, there's so many different positions you can go. Oh, safety.
If you're San Fran, you draft kind of best available here defensively. But in terms of the defensive line, I'm going to agree with you, defensive line. But I don't think you go edge here.
You going to
Interior wise, you
interior?
have an old and unhealthy Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, I forgot
Dude's
about that.
barely played for you. And you signed him that big old 4-year contract back in 22 or whenever you signed it. He's been old. He's been injured. He hadn't been what you wanted him to. And the same goes for Malik Collins you got out of, I think he was at Houston before.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been the free agent signing you had hoped for. So now you have two starters on that interior D line, and they're not panning out as best as you wanted to.
Right.
The only way to help these aging defensive interior linemen is to draft a young one. And at number 11, Nate, the San Francisco 49ers select Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan.
Michigan, he actually played. You know what? He played pretty well last year when they were on their push for the national championship. He was pretty decent. Um, I think if that's the D tackle, yeah, I actually like this pick. Actually, I mean, because again, I thought if there's somebody you draft best available. But if somebody is going to offer you a little bit of something extra for that pick to climb up and grab it, because San Fran, let's just talk, let's call it how it is. They're still a team with championship aspirations, and they're not old. Their window hasn't completely closed. They just had an off year because they were hit by injury.
Injuries.
So yeah,
So you think they might trade out of this spot?
it wouldn't bother me if they did. If somebody was to offer them like maybe extra second round pick for this year and a third round pick for this year, you know, draft capital. You still can draft first round talent in the second round.
I agree. Well said by a 5-year NFL veteran. But in terms of the mock draft, it could very well happen. I like that idea of trading back. I love draft capital. If you watch me play Madden franchise, I am a draft capital fiend. And I have like 96 overall teams because I'll draft players and have them be my depth. And then if they get good enough to start, they'll start. And then I'll just keep drafting depth and depth and depth and depth. And that's what you got to do if you're San Fran in this situation. If you acquire more draft capital and you get more depth for that injury-riddled team, that's great. That's great. Because that's what it looked like you needed this past year because you didn't have it. So let's keep going, Nate. Number 12, the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. This is the difficult thing, Nate.
Yeah, because I hate.
I'm going to put it to you straight. There is a big need production-wise in Dallas. And I don't know if we see eye to eye on this. But is there anything you could think of that just came short every time they got on the offensive side of the ball? Anything?
Dallas is in a conundrum.
You could say passing, but You're gonna have Dak back, so I'm not worried about that.
Nah, but you're gonna have to be able to protect Dak, and on top of that, because Dak has the highest cap hit of next year, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, it's like
He
80 or
has the
90 million. It's crazy.
exactly, and you just re-signed CD. You need to do something about that running game, to be honest with you, because Dallas is good when they have an established running game. This will be probably a part where you go ahead and take that running back out of Boise State, Ashton Genty.
Is it, Nate? At
I mean,
number 12, do the Dallas Cowboys select Ashton Jeanty? He said himself his dream is to be a Cowboy.
if they don't select Ashton Genty, they're going defense, and if they're going defense, they got to go D interior D line. Or no, you know what? You got to go safety with Dallas. Dallas needs a safety, but I take Genty.
You have to address that horrific running game you
That's
have.
why I said, you take I take Genty.
And I'm going to agree because at number 12, the Dallas Cowboys, they pick Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. And I have been the one in years past, if you have watched these mock drafts, to not grade running backs as high due to the fact of how the running back market is. Most
Yeah,
teams don't want to pay a running back. So in my eyes, are teams going to look to draft a quarterback high if they don't want to pay him? So it's starting to become a position where it's like, do you really need it?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
for Dallas's sake, they need it. So you got to draft the Heisman runner-up, Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State with the number 12 pick.
Yeah.
I think we're on consensus for that one, Nate.
No, that's perfect. Because again, let's call a spade a spade. Not this is not a insult to Dak and his ability. But when Dallas is good, they have a well established offense. They have a well rounded and balanced offense with the running game and with the passing game. So yes,
Well, let's keep eating, Nate. Because at 13, the Miami Dolphins are on the clock. And I'm really, really confused with this pick because of this prospect. You might know who I'm talking about by these words. I don't know. A lot of people are having him as an edge, but he was very good as a middle linebacker in college. So I'm going to say he's playing linebacker. Whether he plays outside linebacker and you keep him back, and maybe every once in a while you put him on the line, maybe. But in my eyes, I'm going to keep him as a linebacker. And I think the Dolphins need a middle linebacker. If not, somebody who can come on the line and play a little bit of some football. Is there anybody you know that you think I'd be talking about, Nate, at number 13?
see, I was thinking of it different. I was thinking differently for the Dolphins. I thought the Dolphins would pick up a safety since they're letting Javon Holland go.
This safety class is
It's not
it's
strong,
I
but
like a lot of the prospects.
I do like a lot of them. I thought they were going to go into the direction of a safety since they're losing a good safety and a pillar to their defense in Javon Holland. But go ahead and tell me who you thinking.
There's a guy here that might be better than every safety prospect you can think of, Nate. And I'm going to tell you his name. It's Mr. Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Because this dude,
Mm-hmm.
hey, he won best linebacker in the country.
Bucket Sword.
He won the Butkus Award. And there's times where the Butkus Award winner doesn't go until day 3 sometimes. It happens every once in a while.
Yeah.
But if you take your Reuben Fosters of the
Mm-hmm.
world and your other first-round Butkus Award talents, this is the guy. I'm going to tell you what. Usually the people that get drafted day 3 that are Butkus Award winners aren't ones that go to an SEC school. And I'm just going to keep it a buck with you. I am not lying about that. We had a Peyton Wilson, NC State. I think he got drafted in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round. One of the 3. Day 3. And it's just because it just means more. And I don't want to get into an SEC tangent. But that's where ball players, defensive ball players, are freaking made. I mean, we just saw an all Georgia Bulldog defensive line in the dang Super Bowl. Come on now. Come on now. Dolphins going to look at that and say, feed me more. Let's eat a little bit of gravy. And let's take Jalen Walker out of Georgia.
No, that's gonna be a good pick. Regardless, that's a great pick.
So let's keep going because we don't have much show left. 14, the Indianapolis Colts. And man, I mean, there's times where I've grown up and I have seen kind of like certain players that have shined on the Colts in a certain position. And I'm like, I don't have that now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain position in Indianapolis where they have, if they have a superstar or a good player there, they're enjoyable to watch. I don't know if you know what position I'm talking about or have any clue of what I'm talking about.
They got a solid running back. Um,
Keep thinking offensively.
well, receiving, they can be better at the receiver position, but
They
they literally are when they have a solid tight end. When I say a solid tight end, that Dallas Clark, they
mm-hmm.
Dallas Clark was really the epitome. Like he was the X factor in that offense when Peyton was there for years.
Keep
So
talking.
when they have a solid tight end, that really opens things up because you got a good running back in Jonathan Taylor.
Keep talking. Keep
So
eating, Nate. Come
I,
on.
I mean,
Come on.
what tight end are we talking about though?
There is a tight end in particular that happened to play in a postseason loss. That was the only one to catch a ball on Penn State's offense.
Him.
At number 14, the Indianapolis Colts select Tyler Warren,
Tyler
tight end
Warren.
at Penn State. Man, I love how our minds just linked right there, Nate. Tight end, tight end, tight end. When the
But like,
Colts have a good tight end.
do you see like where I was going? Because I mean, I played against Dallas Clark, and their offense spread the spread.
Did it not
It's
spread? I'm
spread.
telling you. Oh my gosh, Nate. I love having a show with the 5-year NFL veteran because I can't ask a question like that and someone like old Petty Boy on Thursday would know the answer to. I digress. Let's keep going. I love the guys on Thursday. That's why I'm on the show. Number 15. Oh, I love this pick. I love this pick. Come on. Come on. Atlanta Falcons. I love it, but I don't like the Falcons. So let's get that right. I don't like the Falcons. Least favorite team of all time. 28-3 was music to my ears. 15.
Petty.
The Atlanta Falcons are here. Man, what do they need, Nate? What do they need?
The Falcons need everything.
They do.
They got the quarterback situation figured out. I mean, but they still owe Kirk so much money. They need to address their offensive and defensive linemen. They have everything they need on offense as far as skill position. They have Drake London, they have Kyle Pitts, and they have Bijan Robinson. They have a great core of young talent at the skill position. Now they need to address some things on the defensive line.
Okay, keep talking.
Pass rush. Pass rush has been non-existent and whack. Defensively, linebackers not being able to cover anybody. Safeties and corners. They need to fix their whole defense.
I love the pass rush. You brought Matthew Judon to be that guy in Atlanta. You traded, I think, a 3rd-round pick and maybe some change for him. Mm-hmm. You gave a little bit of capital for him, and he wasn't that guy. And what have I said before this whole segment? If you need to address a position, if you need to address a situation you have on your team, there ain't a better place to do it than in the 1st round. So at number 15, Nate, let's go Mikael Williams, edge out of Georgia. Come on, feed me, baby.
I like it. Another Georgia Bulldog.
I love this pick. Man, Jalen Walker and Mikael Williams, they look beautiful together.
Yeah.
And, man, Mikael, I actually like him more as an edge. A lot of people are putting Jalen Walker as an edge. I like him more as an edge. Just think Jalen Walker's more of a well-rounded player. Yeah. But don't get me wrong. I love me some Mikael Williams. Mikael. I think. Okay, good. I'll make sure I'm not butchering his name. Sorry if I am. I don't have a pronunciation guide. But let's go to the last pick, and then we'll kind of digress after we've eaten, get a little bit of paper towels, some napkins,
Like,
wipe our face, and yeah, and then I'll play the song, and you know what the song indicates. But at 16, you have the Arizona Cardinals, a team that was number one in their division for a while this past season. I
that
mean,
second half, they just crashed out in that
I
second half.
know, man, it looked like Jonathan Gannon was actually getting something going in Arizona. I mean, you
Yeah,
bring Kyler Murray back, and you bring Marvin Harrison in. People were just like
this team was
unimpressed by Marvin Harrison's year, but I think he did great. This is the
actually,
best the Cardinals have been
I
in a
mean,
minute.
this. Well, no, because two,
They
3 years ago they were like 11-5 and made it in the playoffs. That was the year that I think the Rams won it all, and they had three teams in the NFC West that represented in the playoffs. Now Kyler Murray's got to get better. Hands down, Kyler Murray's got to get better. They need to shore up again that offensive line. I love John Connor. John Connor was or excuse me, James Conner was really really good. He had spurts where he just looked amazing, but he got to stay healthy. They can shore up that offensive line, protect Kyler a little bit better, and establish their running game. Um, Defensively, they were decent. I mean, I'm a defender, so I'm always going to shy to the defensive side. Um,
okay.
they could always add, to that defensive line, and that will really. Buda Baker's still there. He's getting older. They have Byron Murphy there. If I'm not mistaken, they got solid corners. They really do have solid corners. I would
Mm.
say if we're gonna go defensively, it's going to be from the linebacker position or the defensive line position.
Well, you drafted Darius Robinson in the first round in
Hmm.
the defensive end position, and he turned out pretty well. I don't think you addressed that. Your interior, you bring Zaven Collins, who you had as a inside linebacker for the majority of his career, and you put him on the outside line. He's found a new home, and you're thinking, okay, well, you got to kind of free up that second level, right? You got to get somebody to have that second level. But when I was looking and I was researching, Nate, you had a guy, your number one corner, Sean Murphy Button, come in,
Hmm.
and he hadn't been the guy. I'm just gonna say it. He hadn't been the guy. You said they have solid corners. I just don't know if I've seen it. Maybe I'm wrong, but you draft somebody in Max Melton last year who looked pretty good, but I don't even know if he's healthy right now.
Yeah,
So
that was a question. He's a question mark right now heading
he
into the.
is a question mark. So you don't really have anybody in that secondary, but you do have a prospect that can pretty much play both and maybe corner a little bit better than safety.
Hmm.
And this is also a pick that I love. Man, I love a lot of these picks. Because at 16, Nate, the Arizona Cardinals select. Sorry, I'm getting a little full right now. Ja'Day Barrett, cornerback out of Texas.
I thought he was going to slip. I thought he would slip later first round, early second round.
Man, when I
But just
got,
depending on the team, what they need.
I know, and a lot of people are gonna go first round. We don't see going first round, like Ricky
Yeah,
Purcell. Man, I did not see him
wide
going
receiver.
first round. That was crazy. But when I saw this guy, and I'm a very big, I like to watch these guys play. That's right. But when I see them in person, Nate, when I saw this guy in person, him and Makuba, Andrew Makuba, I really like him. That Texas secondary was just off the chain this year,
Yes,
and
they're
it
really.
was led by none other than this guy right here. And that's the guy who's going to Arizona. And I love this pick, Nate. And at pick number 17, we just talked about him. It's the Cincinnati Bengals.
We're on the
And
clock.
I couldn't talk about it anymore.
We're on the
You
clock.
got to prioritize defense. And so as I was looking at what position I wanted to prioritize for the Cincinnati Bengals, there's one position in particular I think needs kind of centering, upgrading. improving, and that's definitely on the defense. Now, your defensive line needs work. Trey Hendrickson looked like the only guy that wanted to play football last year on your defensive line.
Yeah.
But you have a star there. There is a
Yeah.
position on the defense where you are lacking in terms of stars. Do you have any idea what that position could be, Nate?
That whole defense is lacking stars. That
It
whole
is. It is. It is. It
that whole
is.
defense is lacking stars. I don't know. You got to fill me in because that whole defense is lacking. You can't just say the D linemen. They're lacking stars and a lot
Everywhere. Everywhere. I get it. I
everywhere.
get it. I get it. Okay. Let me help you. Secondary is a big hole in secondary, but I'm really, really looking at those safeties. So they were an all-time bad last year.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible. They were bad enough to where they missed the playoffs with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase leading the league in absolutely everything offensively.
In
Everything they could.
every statistical category.
Everything they could, they led the league, and the defense just couldn't show up. They went 9-8, missed the playoffs. This is where you're looking at safety. Geno Stone from the Ravens. Bad free agent acquisition. Did not turn out how you wanted him to go. Jordan Battle, not the prospect you wanted him to be at safety. Okay? Now your two starting safeties are kind of, what are you going to do? And then you get Von Bell, who was great, but he's getting too old. He's a shell of his former self. You
Yeah.
have to fix that safety position. And I think the best way to do that, Nate, is at 17, the Cincinnati Bengals select Malachi Starks out of Georgia.
Out of Georgia? That's a nice pick.
Ooh, I love Malachi Starks. I love Malachi Starks. He is just a ball player.
I like it. I like it. I like
Jack
it.
Gaffney
Top 5
likes
player
him
in this
too.
class. He really is a top 5 player in this class, though.
And it's crazy how he fell all the way to 17. There's a world where I see him going higher. Safeties generally don't go super high. So, I don't know where I'd want to put him. But if he falls to the Bengals at 17, like I think he is, hey, let's draft him.
Yeah. If he and at this point, if he's there, you have to.
You have to. Exactly. He's a great ball player. Loved
Yeah,
him at Georgia.
He can play.
He can play.
He can play. In the right system, he can play.
Hopefully that's the Bengals because, Jordan Battle was a second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, and he's part of a great Alabama defense, but he just wasn't that great when he came to the NFL. So let's keep eating it. At number 18, you have the Seattle Seahawks. And in my mind, there is a position group that is in question going into 2025. Big question mark. And it's not in terms of the starters. It's in terms of if they can stay healthy. Offensive tackle, Nate. Charles Cross, you selected 9th overall a couple years back out of Mississippi State. And he's been injured. Can't stay healthy. And your other tackle, Abraham Lucas, has been injured. Can't stay healthy. That is the story of your tackle's career in Seattle. Yeah. So, how do you ensure you can stay above that injury proneness? You were 28th in run blocking in 2024. Awful. You have such a great running back room. But if you're 28th in run blocking, there's nowhere for them to go.
No,
you can't produce. You don't have the line to. So, the only way to do that is to pick somebody who can field and rotate when your tackles go down.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anybody better at number 18 than Armand Membow, tackle out of Missouri.
Good solid pick. That's a solid pick. That's a steal right there.
It might be.
Steal. That's a steal right there. That's a steal. I like him. And again, they do need to shore up and beef up that offensive line to not only to protect Geno, but they got to develop a solid run game. So yeah, I like it.
Let's keep eating. Number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Evans is old. Chris Godwin on the
He's getting
final year of his 3-year deal. Could be franchise tag coming up soon. But you got to have somebody at receiver position when them guys are gone.
yeah.
Because they're not getting younger. And who you have up, I don't mind Jalen McMillan. He's not a bad guy. But when you pick a guy in the first round at receiver, you expect him to be a starter right away. Is there anybody you think I could be referring to that could fit so well as a Buccaneer at number 19? Physical. Physical. Didn't do so hot this year.
Because that's what I'm just about to say. It really wasn't many receivers that just wowed you like that.
There's not, but like I told you before the combine started, I wasn't going to. I did one small little change, but I wasn't going to touch the most of the 16. I told you I was going to keep it because we started the first before the combine, and I wanted to respect that, so I continued it right. And so this guy is.
I'm trying to think, does LSU have any receivers this year?
No, I don't. I can't think of any that are first round talent. I can think of one that's pretty good, but he's not first round talent, and he was a transfer to TCU.
I don't really see no receivers coming out of this draft. I don't.
And that's fine. And that's fine. After the combine, we could very well see not many receivers picked.
Texas had that with the Texas receiver that ran a 4.3. He had a couple of receivers run some 4.3s. But just
he could be picked here. I could see him going here. But, I told you I wasn't going to try to change anything.
Who?
So, before the combine started, this was my pick. Physical. Didn't do great last season, but you're drafting him because of his potential. And that's what NFL scouts are looking at, his potential. So, at number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. That's the wide receiver, Nate.
Not a bad one. That's not a bad
Could
pick.
he not just be a Mike Evans plug and play? I don't want to put that standard on him, but man, he's not huge, but neither is.
He can provide something.
But physical is mess. Physical. And that's what you want.
Okay.
All right. Let's keep eating. At number 20. So this is the first trade I have of the second half of this mock draft. I'm trying to predict a couple trades. So at 22 are the Chargers, and at 20 are the Broncos. I have the Chargers trading up to the Broncos spot and drafting a guy who I think fits perfectly in the Chargers system. So let's talk about it. Okay. Harbaugh. There is an offensive position in LA where he just doesn't have that guy. He tried with free agency last year, tried to get the Seahawks tied in, and it just didn't work out. He wasn't that guy. He wasn't the guy Harbaugh wanted. Will Dissly, he wasn't it. So you got to get a guy that is. And I don't think there's a better prospect or guy than a man from the team up north.
State? Is he
no, we did the Penn State one already.
Already. Oh my God. Not the team up north.
At number 20, Nate. The Los Angeles Chargers select Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Harbaugh's guy offensively. This is him.
What? Perfect pick because Justin Herbert needs that security blanket.
He doesn't have it.
He don't have it, and he needs that. Most effective quarterbacks have a decent security blanket in a tight end. So
I love this.
I like the pick.
Let's keep eating, Nate. All right. The Steelers. Now, you can always pretty much expect the Steelers to pick an offensive guy round one. it just I in the recent years, it's pretty much been offense. Last year you pick up a guard slash tackle, Faltanu out of Washington, and I think that's who they picked. And yeah, I think they're gonna pick an offensive guy again. But there's just a position that you have to get. You have to get, and you're gonna say, "Oh, well, I don't see anybody else either. I don't see anybody else either here." You have nobody besides an old man whose back is aching and knees are locking up on him, and a really young wide receiver you don't know what to do with. You just have George Pickens in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Excuse me.
Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Who do you pick here, Nate?
I don't
You
know.
got to get somebody in that room that you know can be effective and productive.
I don't know because you can. There's been some grumblings that Pittsburgh is going to make a play for DK Metcalf.
Could happen. Could happen. But regardless, we'll wait until what free agency has in store for us. Of course, this is just our 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
So you address your biggest need in the 1.0. And if they do it later in free agency, then I'll fix
But
the mock draft.
but I do think they need a D lineman because Cam Hayward is getting old, and even though he's coming off a first team All Pro year, I think it's time to get somebody there that's opposite of T.J. Watt that can control that line of scrimmage that AFC North because you're going against the likes of a Lamar Jackson, you're going against the likes of a Cincinnati Bengals Joe Burrow, you're going against the likes of a Cleveland Browns team that NFC North, or excuse me, AFC North is a very competitive division, and you got to build on your defense. So I personally would go D lineman.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that. And really, the biggest need will show itself once free
Right,
agency is
right,
said and done because teams aren't going to leave huge wide open holes in position groups. I mean, you're going to address that free agency. If your biggest hole will be addressed in the first round of the draft, if not addressed in free agency. But
right.
as of right now, receiver is in question. If you bring in someone like Russell Wilson or Justin Fields again, you got to have people that can help make that quarterback great, especially someone like Russell Wilson, who did not as good in Denver and had to prove himself. If you're bringing in a quarterback that's trying to prove himself, you have to get people that can help.
I I think
O-line you drafted last year.
I think if they're going to bring Russell Wilson back, I really do see them putting a play on DK Metcalf and going D lineman.
Okay. And I don't hate that at all. But until that does happen, until
Yeah,
they
yeah.
make a move for any of those positions, I think they get at 21 Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver out of
I
Ohio
like
State.
him. They were just showing him on ESPN, and he was talking about how he loved Will Johnson as a competitor. So yeah, that's a good pick.
I I love it. I could see him in the Steelers uniform. Him and George Pickens.
Hmm.
But let's keep eating, Nate. At 22, we said, hey, the Chargers trade up to 20. Denver falls back to 22. Sean Payton tries to get as much draft capital to round off this
Right.
team that he can. And he's still trying to build the team he wants in Denver. I don't think he's anywhere near where he wants to be.
Hmm.
So you got to keep drafting. You got to get draft capital. That's why I see the Broncos trading back with somebody, whether it be the Chargers, whether it be later on in draft. But at 22, there is a guy that jumped up for the combine, and this is the pick I had to make, Nate. This pick I had to make because originally I had Nick Scorton in the top 10. Well, he doesn't compete in the Senior Bowl. I have to drop him. He doesn't compete in the combine. I have to drop him. So now Nick Scorton, I don't know if he will be in the first round, which subtle foreshadowing. He will. I still have him here. But when you don't compete and show scouts, Nick Scorton is not the best edge in this draft. I don't know why he's not competing in these events. He's got to show scouts something.
Sometimes the best thing to do is
Is
the
not compete.
wait for your pro day. Pro day sometimes on your own field where you're familiar. You can get the times and the numbers you need. Yeah.
And I think originally I had Nick Scorton here.
Mm-hmm.
When he didn't play in the combine, I was like, oh well, there's a guy that just jumped the boards, so I had to put him here, and it might be his brother. At 22, Nate, the Broncos run a 3-down lineman set, a 3-4.
They run
And
an odd front.
there's a player here that could either be a great starter or a great rotational player. And at 22, Nate, I see the Broncos taking Shamar Stewart, defensive end out of A&M.
He has a lot of upside, so let's not downplay this pick. He has a lot of upside.
I think he could go even higher than 22.
Yeah, he has a lot of upside.
I just don't know where to put him. And if he falls at 22, the Broncos have to get him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you didn't have great defensive line play this season, and I'd love for you to get someone like Shamar Stewart and still compete. I mean, you were a team that could have very well went far in the playoffs if you had the right pieces.
Yeah.
And you got to start getting the right pieces, and it starts right here at 22. Let's keep eating, Nate. Oh, 23. All right. Last year, if y'all remember, I had Cooper DeJean going to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, you did.
Because I just thought he was such a great Green Bay Packer, and then he falls to the second round. And we all know why he fell to the second round. I don't have to get into that. But he goes to the Super Bowl, and he gets a pick 6 on his birthday. Nate, Green Bay Packers. Jair Alexander could be gone soon.
I was about to say, we got to go corner. We got to go corner. He could
be gone. Keyshawn Nixon. He ain't getting any better at the cornerback. He's only good on special teams.
We got to get corner.
Javon Bullard is young. You got to get corner. And there's a guy in this draft class that is just screaming to be picked by the Packers at quarterback. What you think? You don't have anybody in mind, dude?
No, I don't. It was a solid. It was a good deal of corners, but I mean, I was more so less impressed by both Travis Hunter and Will Johnson. But there's other corners, of course. Let's see who we got.
At 23, Nate, the Green Bay Packers select Benjamin Morrison, cornerback out of Notre Dame.
He was the left corner out of Notre Dame. Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm.
That was I mean, he didn't have the best showing against Ohio
State.
Ohio State. He didn't have the best.
Well, he was injured most of the year. I don't think he came back into the playoffs.
So, but I like the pick because Jair Alexander is probably going to be gone this year. So, yeah.
Because at 24, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Do they re-sign Sam Darnold? They're probably not going to franchise tag Sam Darnold. I don't know.
It's okay. This is an enigma because they can get some draft stock for Sam Darnold. He had an amazing year, and this is a perfect comeback story. But they drafted J.J. McCarthy. They're going to have to get rid of Sam Darnold to get some of that draft capital.
Well, the only way they can get draft capital is if they keep Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's a free agent, so it's like, yeah, you're right. You're at a dilemma. Do you keep him and try to go draft capital and keep J.J. McCarthy, or do you just let him walk?
No, you can't let him walk because he's earned his payday. He earned another opportunity, but you need to the Vikings need to be compensated for, like, again, how he's played, because McConnell did a hell of a job with him. So no, you get what you can.
Well, regardless of whoever is behind that offensive line, you got to get a guy that can protect him. And whoever's there, like I said, is going to need protection.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So I got to looking. I was like, hey, do they need a tackle? I think their tackles are pretty
No, their
pretty
tackles are pretty
solid.
good. Their tackles are pretty solid.
And so now I'm really looking at that interior. And I'm not liking it as much.
They can get a center.
Center, guard.
Yeah, combo.
Really, I'm thinking guard because at 24,
Mm-hmm.
he's probably the best pure guard out of this draft class. And the Minnesota Vikings select Tyler Booker out of Alabama.
Alabama. I like it. I like it.
So that's we have people that could probably play guard and could probably play tackle, but this one right here is just pure guard, pure guard. Yeah, this is the thing with the test and the draft before we go on. CJ Stroud, people say the only reason he didn't go number 1 overall was because he didn't test well. It's difficult when you're in quarterback situation, of course, because you really want to have a quarterback with good IQ. Linemen, I feel, are the same. But if you got a guy that can play football, you got a guy that can play football. And so, athletically. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
We'll see what happens. I think this is the best pure guard in the draft class. So let's keep eating. All right, 25. Man, the Texans. This is the thing, Nate. This is the thing. You have great, and I mean great, defensive ends in Houston. And these ends are so good, so great, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, that they overshadow that interior D-line.
Mm-hmm.
They're so good that
Yep.
they pull every single bit of weight on that D-line.
Yep.
And it leaves you looking at the interior like, oh, well, they must be good. Well, they're not really that good. So you got to get a guy in interior. And I interviewed him at the Senior Bowl. And it hurt me just a little bit to interview him. And I think you're going to know why. Because at 25, the Houston Texans select Walter Nolan,
Ole Miss.
D tackle at Ole Miss. What is great about this, and what I interviewed, I said, look, Walter, if you're on my draft board, what kind of player am I getting? And he said, look, I'm great on the defensive line. I can take the pressure off the ends' backs. And if your end play is already great, and you bring Walter Nolan in and take even more of that burden off of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, we could be seeing even better numbers out of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter.
Well, Anderson had a hell of a year.
He did. They had both great years. But imagine what they could do if that interior D-line was a little bit better than it is now.
Yeah.
So, Walter Nolan, welcome to Houston, buddy. Let's keep eating, Nate. 26. I got another trade. So, at 26, the Detroit Lions trade up with the Los Angeles Rams to get a guy. Now, originally I thought, okay, well, maybe they could go offensive lineman here. And it's like, oh, well, you're getting a little older in offensive linemen, but usually offensive linemen tend to cap out at maybe like 32 or 33. But you just never know. You just never know with those linemen. I mean, they could go out in any time. They'll just say they're retired and they're retired. So you never know. It could be 30, 29, 31, 32, 33, whatever. And then I got thinking, I'm like, man, is that what they really need right now? They were one step away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
What stopped them from getting there? And if you look at it, I think there's only one answer to that. Injury-riddled defense.
Man,
you couldn't keep your D-line healthy. Aiden Hutchinson led your team with 7.5 sacks. Get this, Nate. He played 5 games and led your team in sacks. You can't have that happen.
7.5 in 5 games. That's crazy. And was
And led
effective.
your team in 18 weeks and only played 5 games.
And then also made plays in the passing game, intercepting passes, showing a lot of athleticism. Yeah,
You have to trade up and get a guy who can help you. I don't know who this guy is, but I had him falling all the way from 8 to 26. So I'm just going to say he's going 26. In the Lions draft, Nick Scorton, edge at a Texas A&M.
I like that one.
I don't
I,
know how well he's going to be purely because we haven't seen him.
right.
Pro day hadn't happened. If he does great pro day, I might swap him with Shamar Stewart. I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth on the two.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we'll just have to see. But
Yeah.
I think you have to go edge simply because you know you can compete. You were one step away from the Super Bowl. What was the issue where you couldn't get to the Super Bowl?
Got
And
you. Got
edge
you.
is the answer.
That's the big thing right there is getting over that hump. Getting over that hump. So I like this pick. Was 27.
Let's keep eating. 27, the Baltimore Ravens are up. Now, man, it's just the theme of the day, I guess. D lineman, D lineman, D lineman. Usually that's how it goes, right? Lineman, that's the most you got on the football field.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Ravens at 27, and I just think they need another man on that D line because look, this is what's going on. You run a 3-down lineman set, okay? You got people coming down from outside linebacker to play. Kyle Van Noy, for example, he had 12.5 sacks, great season. Yeah. And then you had Matabute. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but the other one on the end.
Yeah.
With 6.5 sacks. So they combined for 19 sacks in 24. But the other two on that line, they only combined for 3. So you really got to get somebody who can play. Because the way the Ravens play, and Noah, if you're watching, I know you're a Ravens fan, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on this. You have your D tackle and your 2 ends. But Kyle Van Noy came down and made it 4 a lot of times.
Yeah.
But you had an end playing inside. Okay? So I thought, hey, we got somebody that can be end. I know there's an edge rusher available who I really like.
Yeah.
But is he going to be able to play inside? And I don't think there's a question in my mind whether this guy's going to be playing inside. This guy was the best player in Group of 5 last year besides Ashton Jeanty. Defensively, he was the best player in Group of 5. 27. The Baltimore Ravens select Mike Green, edge out of Marshall.
He came from Marshall, and it's funny. He was because he went to Marshall, and quote unquote, it wasn't like one of the Georgias or the Alabamas. His talent outshined a lot of guys that were there at those schools and whatnot. It's just the school he went to wasn't publicized and just. Yeah, but he's a great talent. I like him.
Well, that's why you have to be careful with these types of guys, right? Because you don't really know how they're going to play in. I mean, you don't know how any of these guys are going to play. I'm not just saying like Group of 5 guys are bad, but in certain positions, it's like, okay, well, you didn't play Alabama O lineman, you didn't play SEC O lineman or Big Ten O lineman. So how well are you actually going to perform once it goes to the NFL? He went to the Senior Bowl, Nate. And he won every single rep day 1. He did so good. He just sat out the rest of the week. He was phenomenal. Best. If I could give an MVP for the whole week, it would be Mike Green, even though he played 1 day. He was that phenomenal in Mobile. And the only way to reward that is to have him drafted in the first round. Also, yes, you're right. There is that question. How well would he be if he played on a Georgia? Or how well would he be if he played on an Ohio State? But we can't put those ramifications on a player like Mike Green because he was the best player in Group of 5 other than Ashton Jeanty.
Okay. I'm with you.
So, Nate, anything else on Mike Green?
Nah.
All right.
Let's go.
Let's keep eating. 28, we said, hey, the Lions trade up to 26. The Rams fall back to 28. And you got kind of a dilemma here. You just signed Matthew Stafford to an extension. Okay. I don't know how much longer Matthew Stafford is going to be in LA. But for the time being, this is another one of those teams that can also compete. What stopped you from making a far playoff run? That's the questions you have to ask when you get to the second half of this first round. What stopped you from getting farther? If it's quarterback play, great. I don't think it's quarterback play. I think the only thing you can do here is draft somebody to protect an aging Matthew Stafford or whoever the next guy is going to be.
I would just draft somebody to protect Matthew right now because you can get an established tackle already. Then you can go to the next year and if you need to draft a quarterback.
So at 28, Nate, the Los Angeles Rams select Cameron Williams, tackle out of Texas.
Hell of a pick.
It's difficult to see how well Cameron Williams was because he had Kelvin Banks Jr. on the other side. So he was constantly overshadowed. And this was the dilemma for a Byron Murphy and a T'Vondre Sweat. It's like, okay, well, Byron Murphy's the guy, right? Well, one of them won the best defensive lineman in the Big 12. And one of them won the best defensive lineman in the country. So it's, which one are we going to pick? Going to pick the one that won the best in the conference or in the country. And you get into this dilemma about which one's better. Well, T'Vondre Sweat fell all the way to the second round. I don't think that's the story for the other tackle out of Texas. Cameron Williams gets picked at 28.
I like it.
So we keep eating.
Yeah.
29. The Washington Commanders are on the clock. And oh my gosh, you know how much I love my little Jaden Daniels. But
how do you build off this team this season that they just had? An amazing season at that. And rookie of the year for Jaden Daniels. And how do you build off of that?
Exactly. How do you build off
and you just make a trade for Deebo Samuel. I feel, me personally, you can either go offensive line or go defensive line. But seeing that the last tackle, just one of the best tackles, just went before you, you got to go D line.
And I agree. You have to go lineman here, whether it's O line or D line. But this is my thought process with this pick. I originally wanted to go receiver because I wanted to give Jaden Daniels another weapon. You just got Deebo Samuel. I don't know if you draft a receiver first round.
No. Heck no.
So you look at D-line and you say, yes, you had some people leaving. And it's just, man, what do I want to do at the end of the day? You got 50-something points put on you in the conference championship.
Exactly.
And defense was kind of the story of how that went down.
Not to mention, you let Saquon score on the very first play from scrimmage. And they ran for over 200 something. You have to address that D-line.
And I agree. But there's also something in my mind saying, man, you really are in trouble if Jaden Daniels doesn't produce like he did his freshman campaign. If he hits a sophomore slump, you are in trouble because he's pretty much your offense. I mean, he's the one that extended plays. He's the one that threw Hail Marys and scored on. I mean, the Commander scored and won on the last play of like the last 3 games of the season, last 4 or 5 games of the season. I can't remember the number. And it was really because of Jaden Daniels. The man knew how to extend plays. He found an open receiver and got there. But the only way to ensure he doesn't have a sophomore slump and he can still extend plays and get you in winning positions to make another playoff run is to keep giving him people that can help him extend plays.
Yes.
And that's offensive line.
There we go.
I know we said defense. And my dad said, look,
no,
you got to
go. I said either defensive line or offensive line because you got to protect Jaden Daniels. I think one of the things is going to be pretty big too going into this year too. We want to see him improve, but we want to see the Commanders establish a running game so that can help him.
But
You
let's
know,
look at it, Nate. You have a guy who has played interior for most of his career at tackle, Andrew Wiley. He's a guard. He's played most of his career in the interior. Now he's playing tackle in Washington because of your free agent acquisitions in 2024 that opened up your interior O line. Some of them are gone. You still have
Mhm.
your center Tyler Bediaz, and that's great from Dallas. And it's just, man, do I want to have a guard continue playing tackle? I don't want to. I don't think I want to. I want to get a pure tackle that I think can come in and help Jaden Daniels extend plays, open up the running game, help Jaden Daniels out, and get that offense productive. Yes, you lost. You had 56 points scored on you. There's more picks than just the first round. The first round pick, you have to address your biggest need. In my opinion, it's offensive lineman,
Go
offensive
ahead.
tackle to be
Let's see what you
specific,
got.
because this is what led to the Commanders to compete. So
Yeah,
at 29, Nate, the Washington Commanders picked Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State,
I like
the
it.
Ohio State
State
University.
University. I like it. I like it. We are on the same point, same page, because it's either you're gonna build that offensive line to be able to protect Jaden, or you're gonna have to get that defense going, because again, you're in that NFC East with the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. They running the ball, and they just gave Saquon a 2-year extension. You have to be able to stop the running game. So I love it.
And that Eagles team is only getting better. When we get to 32, this was the hardest pick I think I've ever had to make
Oh,
in a
I
mock
can't wait
draft
to get now. I can't wait to hear this.
so let's keep eating, Nate. 30. This is probably my favorite pick of the whole second half. Either this one or the Bengals pick. Whole second half is my favorite pick. The Buffalo Bills are on the clock. Okay? My dad don't like the Commanders pick, but hey, I thought I explained it pretty well, and 5-year NFL veteran liked the explanation. So
I mean, getting your offensive line important, like or building that up for your young quarterback is very very important. That's your
I
franchise.
agree. It's
So
your franchise. I
that's
agree.
franchise. That's franchise, and we seen what he did last year. This previous year, we gotta protect him because we know what we're getting from him. But let's go to this 30th pick.
Buffalo Bills are on the clock, Nate.
All right.
And I'm not trying to be rude, but we have practice squad king Damar Hamlin starting at safety in the year of our Lord 2025.
I was gonna you before you said anything, I was like, man, they got to go safety. They need a safety.
I just hate the way their safety played. I mean, oh my gosh, if you look at their playoff run, that third level was terrible. Terrible. So you got to get a guy in the third level. And I love this pick. Oh my gosh, I can't say it more, because at 30, the Buffalo Bills select Nick Emanwari, safety out of South Carolina. Man, I love this. I love this pick. Man's a ball player. I love it.
He's going to be perfect. He's going to be perfect. And going there with Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott is going to put him in a position to succeed. So perfect. That's a good pick.
Well, let's keep eating. 31, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, the runner-ups to the Super Bowl champions. Yes. And my original thought was, here, let's put someone like Harold Fannin Jr. tight end at Bowling Green. And this was my mindset going into this. He can play tight end. Travis Kelce isn't gonna be there for much longer. He can
Yeah.
play in the backfield if you need a blocker and you want to run somebody in for a touchdown. I mean, he can do multiple things. He's a Swiss Army knife. And I would love for him to come to New Orleans and be my second Taysom Hill. But there's a guy at 31 that I like a little bit better for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Harold Fannin Jr. would be dangerous. But you have to look at what happened this past year. And Patrick Mahomes can pretty much play with anybody. But oh my gosh, if you didn't have the whole Kansas City hospital filled up with your wide receivers, I don't know what you had in Kansas City. So I have them picking a wide receiver here. And I told you that I didn't change it from before the combine. So I could very well see this guy moving all the way up to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers spot. But until the 2.0 mock draft, until I fix it up and round off some of the
The
edges,
receiver?
Nate, you have to think their receiver play in the Super Bowl was not good.
But you want to know something?
Not good.
I don't know if I would go receiver. I would, you know what? Again, that defensive play was not that good in the Super Bowl. Like, we got to get better defensively. But let me hear the receiver you got. Let's see who you got.
Well, maybe I might make it up to you once you hear the pick because you had a guy last year, Xavier Worthy, broke the record for the 40-yard dash.
He looked good.
I mean, he straight up just started being dangerous on the Chiefs. That's what everyone. How can you allow the Chiefs to draft someone like Xavier Worthy? And Nate, they're going to do it again. There's a guy. Now, although they did not play together, a guy that played in Texas this past season. He was at Houston in 2022 and 2023. But he just made a case to stay in the first round and maybe shoot up to 19, like I said earlier. The Kansas City Chiefs at 31 pick Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. If he is here at 31, Nate, you have to pick him.
That's the guy who had like one of the fastest 40. Yeah, that's him.
He had the second fastest 40 among wide receivers and corners, I think. But, man, if he's here at 31, Nate, I know as good as Harold Fannin Jr. might be, Matthew Golden's a little bit better, in my opinion. And you got to pick him up.
Okay.
So let's keep eating. Last pick of the mock draft before we get – I know I told you it was going to be a little longer. We kind of been pretty good on time. So 32 is the Eagles. We know this was the best roster in football. This might be the most difficult decision of who I think they're going to draft at 32. I don't know what they're thinking. They could go either way. And so there is only one thing that I could have thought of in probably the 20 or 30 minutes I sat and looked at the Philadelphia Eagles depth chart and read about what I thought they were going to do. I mean, a lot of most research went into this 32 pick once I got to the end. You have that full Georgia Bulldog D-line. And there's going to be a time pretty soon where you're going to have to pay that full Georgia D-line.
One by one.
Exactly. If you do not want to pay this full Georgia D-line, draft a D-lineman. Only way you could do it. So, if there comes a time where you don't want to re-sign Jordan Davis, or you don't want to re-sign Jalen Carter, or you don't want to re-sign him, or you don't want to re-sign him, let's draft a D-lineman to back him up.
You wouldn't go corner with the loss of Darius Slay?
I thought about it. I think they'll re-sign Darius Slay. But like I told you, I didn't change this before the combine. So a lot of these news is I'll round it off in the 2.0. So we'll probably have a much different mock draft come 2.0. But I tried to keep it the same before the combine, just like we did the first 16 picks. But that was my thought process. If you don't want to pay these Georgia Bulldogs to play in Philadelphia, draft someone that can take their spot.
Draft some more.
Not necessarily a Georgia Bulldog, but draft somebody who's probably the best available here on the D-line. And I think at 32, that's Derek Harmon, D-tackle out of Oregon. I saw him at the Senior Bowl, Nate.
Look good.
Great. The pressure he caused for them ends to just come in and swoop up the quarterback, chef's kiss. He might go higher up. It's just so difficult to tell who's going to be these teams' guys. You know, I have teams going in the second round that some guys have going in the first. Or I have guys going in the first round, some guys have in the second round. Yeah. It's very difficult, especially with the 32nd pick. Now, I will say, now that we are finished with our first mock draft of the season, if every single team picked like they have in this mock draft, it would be the first time in 20 plus years where every team has picked in the first round of the NFL draft. If it were to happen. Now, people have the Browns trading up to the first round or the Giants trading up to the first round to get those guys that they need to kind of start a run. If I was either one of those teams, I don't know if I'd trade up as somebody that's still trying to build. Draft capital is your friend. That's the only way you can rebuild is with draft capital. Now, I know there's a thing as too much. But if you have a lot of day 3 picks, you're not going to be paying them draft picks that much money. If you got a lot of day 1 picks, I can see you trading them. But if it all stays like it is, every team picks in the first round, it'll be the first time in 20 plus years it's happened. I think 2002. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember the year. Wish I had it written down. But if you liked what you didn't like, if you liked it, please leave it in the comments. Like I said before, just simply don't dislike the video because you disagree. I would love to comment with somebody and have a conversation. You know, I'm not super argumentative unless I'm having an SEC and Big Ten debate with Kenny. But other than that, I'll comment with you. I'll have a conversation with you. There's no bad blood. We can have a nice intellectual conversation about football. I know what I know. You know what you know. And my dad don't like Josh Simmons to the Commanders. But if you agree with it, let me know in the comments. Nate, is there anything you'd like to say before we go into the next little bit?
Hell of a job. Couple picks I was like a little questionable, but
That's
this is
fine.
the mock draft 1.0. I can't wait for the 2.0. The 2.0 is going to have a lot more because as the as a new league year begins and people are still getting released and signed and whatnot, the draft needs are going to change and fluctuate. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking forward to that part.